No one really warns you about this, but there are times when loyalty is not rewarded by life or by the universe. Sometimes loyalty is not honored at all. Sometimes it is cut short suddenly, without explanation or consent. And the person you once believed you could not survive without is unexpectedly being removed from your life, almost like a sharp splinter pulled from skin before you are ready. What most people do not realize is that before this final separation happens, before the door fully closes, the universe always sends signals. It does not send just one hint or a vague feeling. It sends several clear signs that the role a narcissist plays in your life is reaching its end. These signs are not random. They are patterned, purposeful, and deeply connected to your nervous system, your awareness, and your sense of self. The first sign is emotional exhaustion, and this is not normal tiredness, and it is not a personal failure. It is your body and nervous system communicating that they have been living in survival mode for far too long. In narcissistic relationships, you are rarely allowed to simply exist as you are. You are always alert. You are always watching tone changes, timing your words, tracking mood shifts, and sensing unspoken rules that seem to change without warning. You replay conversations again and again in your mind, wondering what you said wrong, what you should have said instead, or how you can prevent the next emotional explosion or silent punishment. Over time, this constant state of alertness drains you deeply, not just emotionally, but physically and mentally as well. It reaches into your body at a cellular level. You may begin to notice that even simple or neutral interactions with them feel heavy and draining, as if there is pressure on your chest before the conversation even starts. The thought of engaging with them can feel exhausting before a single word is spoken. This exhaustion often shows up as brain fog, emotional numbness, lack of motivation, irritability, or a strong desire to be alone. You might find yourself canceling plans more often, sleeping longer than usual, or craving silence and isolation. This is not you giving up. This is not laziness. This is your body attempting to create space and safety when your mind has been conditioned to stay attached at all costs. Narcissistic relationships require constant emotional output while offering very little genuine emotional return. You give empathy, reassurance, patience, validation, and understanding. In return, you often receive confusion, subtle criticism, emotional withdrawal, or affection that feels conditional and unstable. Eventually, this imbalance becomes impossible to sustain. What makes this sign especially important is that it cuts through denial. You can justify words, you can excuse behavior, you can minimize incidents, but you cannot negotiate with a body that no longer has the energy to perform emotional labor. Emotional exhaustion removes your ability to keep pretending everything is okay. You may notice that you no longer feel capable of defending them to others or even defending the relationship to yourself. Requests that once felt manageable now feel intrusive. Their presence begins to feel like a duty instead of a bond. This is often when guilt appears. You may tell yourself that wanting space makes you selfish, cold, or ungrateful. In truth, this exhaustion marks the beginning of emotional detachment. It is the universe placing a boundary around you when you were never allowed to place one yourself. When your energy begins pulling away naturally, it means the dynamic has crossed a threshold your system refuses to tolerate any longer. The second sign is clarity that arrives through confusion. This stage is deeply uncomfortable because it feels like you are losing your footing just as you are actually starting to see clearly. In narcissistic dynamics, your mind is trained to override your own perceptions. You explain away contradictions. You excuse harmful behavior. You accept explanations that never fully make sense. You do this to preserve the attachment because acknowledging the truth would threaten a relationship you have invested so much of yourself into. When the universe begins to interfere, that mental balancing act starts to fall apart. You may notice that their words no longer have the same effect on you. Promises start to feel hollow. Apologies sound rehearsed or empty. Their stories change depending on who they are speaking to. You catch small inconsistencies and contradictions, and instead of smoothing them over automatically, they linger in your mind. This creates mental tension and emotional discomfort. You may feel scattered, anxious, or unsettled because the version of reality you were holding together can no longer stay intact. This is not you losing your mind. This is cognitive dissonance finally surfacing instead of being buried. During this phase, many people describe feeling mentally foggy yet strangely alert at the same time. You still question yourself, but the questions shift. Instead of constantly asking what you did wrong, you begin asking why this pattern keeps repeating or why interactions leave you feeling drained and uneasy every time. The confusion itself is not the enemy. The confusion is the opening. It forces your brain to slow down and look at patterns rather than excuses. It brings awareness where denial once lived. This stage often comes with a sense of emotional unease that is difficult to explain. You may feel disconnected even when things seem calm on the surface. You may feel restless around them or emotionally distant without knowing why. The relationship can start to feel unreal, as if you are watching it from the outside rather than living inside it. This is your perception adjusting. You are no longer fully absorbed in the narrative they built. What makes this stage painful is that clarity does not arrive as relief. It arrives as disruption. The universe lifts the blindfold before it opens the door. You are made aware before you are released, and once you start noticing the gap between words and actions, your mind cannot ignore it, even when part of you longs to return to the comfort of not knowing. The third sign is escalation, and this is often the most confusing of all because it tends to happen right when you begin to emotionally pull back. When a narcissistic person senses a loss of control, even on a subconscious level, their behavior intensifies. This is not accidental. Narcissistic dynamics rely on dominance, attention, and emotional access. When your energy starts to withdraw, the structure they depend on to feel powerful is threatened, and their response is to apply pressure. You may see sudden increases in criticism, sarcasm, blame, or emotional distance. Behaviors that were once ignored are now used as weapons. Past mistakes are brought up repeatedly. Boundaries are mocked or challenged. Your reactions are analyzed and used against you. In some situations, escalation looks very different. Instead of coldness, there may be excessive affection, dramatic apologies, emotional displays, promises of change, or sudden vulnerability meant to pull you back in. Both extremes serve the same goal, which is to regain emotional control and restore the old pattern. This stage often triggers deep self-doubt. You may believe the relationship is failing because you are changing, because you are being difficult, or because you asked for too much. In reality, the escalation is a response to your growing independence. You are no longer as reactive, as eager to please, or as easily influenced. The narcissistic system detects this shift before you fully understand it yourself. During this phase, the environment often becomes chaotic. Arguments escalate quickly. Calm conversations feel impossible. You may feel pushed into emotional reactions that do not feel like your true self. This chaos is not accidental. Emotional instability makes control easier. When it stops working, intensity increases. This is also when the mask slips more clearly. Entitlement, lack of empathy, and the need to win rather than understand become more visible. You may feel shocked by how far they are willing to go to avoid accountability or loss of control. Escalation is not a sign that the relationship is repairable. It is proof that the dynamic cannot survive without dominance. When the universe is preparing to remove someone from your life, it often allows you to see the full truth of what you have been enduring. Escalation exposes reality without filters. It shows who they are when influence fades and when your compliance is no longer guaranteed. The fourth sign is that your intuition grows louder and more persistent, even if you spent years ignoring it. In narcissistic dynamics, intuition is usually the first thing to be shut down. You are subtly or directly taught not to trust your feelings, your memories, or your emotional responses. Over time, you begin to rely on the other person to define reality. You check their mood before checking your own. You wait for their reactions to decide what is true. This disconnection from intuition is not an accident. It is required for manipulation to continue. When the universe begins preparing for separation, that inner voice starts to return. It does not come back as confidence or certainty. It comes back as discomfort, a tight feeling in your chest, a sense of dread before interactions, a quiet but persistent feeling that something is wrong even when you cannot explain it. You may try to dismiss it, but it keeps coming back stronger each time you ignore it. Your body often reacts before your thoughts do. Your stomach tightens when they call. Your shoulders tense when they enter the room. You feel relief when they leave. These reactions are not random. They are your nervous system responding to information your conscious mind was trained to suppress. Intuition is not loud or dramatic. It is repetitive and consistent. It shows up in patterns, not isolated moments. This stage can feel unsettling because intuition often conflicts with the story you have been telling yourself. They may not say anything obviously wrong, yet you feel unsafe. They may apologize, yet you feel no relief. This gap between logic and inner knowing creates tension inside you. But unlike before, you no longer automatically silence yourself. You begin to listen, even when it scares you, even when it threatens everything you thought you knew. This is the universe guiding you toward the truth gently but persistently, preparing you for a separation that is not meant to punish you, but to protect you. Your intuition starts to speak more clearly, and at the same time, your tolerance for unhealthy behavior begins to shrink. Situations you once accepted or explained away now feel wrong on a deeper level. Things that used to seem manageable suddenly feel heavy, draining, or unacceptable. Instead of automatically justifying what is happening, you begin to question the dynamics. You start asking yourself why certain behaviors exist at all. You may feel drawn toward being alone more often, spending time in quiet reflection, or consuming information that helps you understand what you are living through. This is not you becoming negative, bitter, or overly suspicious. This is self-trust slowly waking back up. The universe does not remove a narcissist from your life until you are able to sense danger without needing clear evidence or dramatic proof. When intuition comes back online, it is a sign that your internal guidance system is restoring itself. And once you reconnect with that inner voice, remaining in the same unhealthy dynamic becomes harder and harder because your mind and body no longer cooperate with denial. Your system starts rejecting what it once tolerated. Another sign is that outside disruptions begin revealing what you have been minimizing for a long time. These disruptions may appear ordinary at first glance, but their timing and emotional impact are meaningful. It might be a conversation you overhear by accident, a passing comment from someone you barely know, a friend pointing out a pattern you avoided naming, or a piece of content that describes your experience so accurately it feels uncomfortable. These moments land differently because they slip past your defenses. They do not feel like attacks or judgments. They feel like reflections. In narcissistic dynamics, isolation is rarely obvious. You are not always completely cut off from others, but your perception is slowly shaped in a way that makes outside opinions feel unimportant or even threatening. You are subtly trained to believe that no one else truly understands the relationship the way you do. When the universe intervenes, it introduces outside perspectives that break that closed mental loop. Suddenly, someone puts words to feelings you never fully expressed, or you encounter a description of your experience that resonates so strongly it registers in your body before your mind has time to analyze it. These moments often show up when you are already emotionally tired and quietly questioning things inside. That timing is not random. It happens because you are finally open enough to receive the truth. Instead of brushing it off, you pause. You think, you reflect, you replay past interactions with clearer eyes. What once felt normal now feels inappropriate. What once felt confusing now feels deliberate. The external world begins confirming what your inner world has been processing in silence. This can feel destabilizing because it disrupts the reality you worked hard to maintain. You might feel defensive, irritated, or even angry at first, because accepting the truth also means acknowledging how much you endured. Grief may surface, along with embarrassment or shame for not recognizing it earlier. These reactions are natural. They are not signs that the inside is wrong. They are part of the awakening process itself. As these disruptions continue, denial becomes exhausting to maintain. You may notice that you stop protecting the narcissist's image when speaking to others. You become more honest. You listen more and explain less. You begin trusting shared reality instead of the isolated bubble you were living in. This is the universe widening your perspective so you can no longer stay confined inside a story that only served one person. Once your internal experience matches external validation, the illusion starts to fall apart. You realize that what you were dealing with has a name, a pattern, and real consequences. And when truth is reinforced both inside you and outside you, the dynamic loses its power because isolation cannot survive where understanding is shared. Another clear sign is that their approval starts losing its emotional hold over you. This shift can feel strange, confusing, and freeing all at once. For a long time, their reactions likely carried enormous influence over your emotional state. Praise felt like relief and safety. Criticism felt crushing and overwhelming. Your mood rose and fell based on how they treated you from one moment to the next. This is how narcissistic conditioning works. Your sense of worth becomes dependent on external feedback. When the universe begins preparing for separation, that system starts breaking down. You may notice that their criticism still hurts, but it no longer defines you. Their silence feels more annoying than devastating. Their approval feels empty instead of rewarding. You may even catch yourself thinking why you care so much about their opinion. That thought might surprise you, because for so long, caring felt automatic and unavoidable. This is not emotional numbness. This is emotional independence beginning to form. At this point, the relationship may start to feel oddly flat. The drama that once kept you emotionally attached loses intensity. The highs no longer feel euphoric. The lows no longer feel life-ending. This is deeply threatening to narcissistic dynamics because they depend on emotional extremes to maintain control. When your emotional reactions stabilize, the bond weakens. You are no longer being reinforced through fear or relief. This stage can bring guilt and confusion. You may worry that you are becoming cold, selfish, or detached. In reality, your nervous system is regulating. You are no longer chasing validation as if your survival depends on it. You start grounding yourself internally instead of looking outward for permission to feel okay. This often happens alongside a rediscovery of your own identity. Interests, values, and desires that were pushed aside may slowly return. As their approval loses power, so do their manipulations, threats, and emotional games. They may try harder to regain control, but something inside you has already shifted. You are no longer measuring your reality through their reactions. You begin seeing that their approval was inconsistent, conditional, and never truly about you. This is a major turning point because narcissistic relationships cannot exist without emotional dependence. Once you stop organizing your self-worth around their responses, the dynamic starts collapsing from the inside. The universe does not remove someone from your life until you are no longer psychologically dependent on their validation. And when their opinion no longer feels like a final judgment on your value, staying connected to them stops making emotional sense. Another sign is that you begin grieving the relationship while you are still part of it. This grief is subtle and confusing because nothing has officially ended, yet something feels finished on a deep level. You may experience waves of sadness that are not linked to any specific conflict. A quiet heaviness appears when you think about the future together. Not because you fear losing them, but because you recognize that nothing will truly change. This is anticipatory grief, and it means your mind and heart have already started letting go. In narcissistic dynamics, hope often keeps you attached. Hope that they will finally understand. Hope that this time will be different. Hope that your effort will eventually be enough. When the universe prepares to remove someone from your life, that hope fades slowly. You stop imagining a healed future. You stop rehearsing conversations that might finally make them see you. Instead, a calm acceptance takes its place. This is not giving up. It is clarity. This grief can feel like depression or emotional numbness, but it is actually the mourning of an illusion. You are grieving the relationship you believed in, not the one you were truly living. That is why the sadness feels hard to explain. You may still care about them while feeling emotionally distant.